Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. This is the third small group meeting of our Owls in Flight virtual conversation series, where we discuss matters relating to the COVID-19 pandemic. I am Jana Brady. I'm a geography lecturer at Southern Connecticut State University, and I have partnered with the Office of International Education to act as a moderator for this series. The COVID-19 pandemic shuttered restaurants, it canceled sporting events and the arts, and it forced us to retreat from places we work and play. It's had a huge impact on so many aspects of our culture and our life. One of the most important aspects of immersive international experience is throwing ourselves into another culture and experiencing all of the sights and the sounds of this new place. I know many traditional spaces have gone silent, but I'm so interested in hearing from you folks about your community and what it has preserved, what aspects of your culture have been really central to getting you through this, and how do you find new ways to create that culture? So please take us on a journey through your community during this pandemic. Eva, can you start us off?
Thank you. Hola a todos. Hi, everyone. And I'm Eva Andreu. I'm from Spain, and I study at Jaime I University in Castellón. And well, regarding the culture, I don't think that culture has changed that much, but it could be said that we are back to normal, except for the fact that we wear masks. But that is true that the social level has been really affected because we Spaniards are very fond of meeting in bars, and that's how we relate to others. So besides, a large part of Spain lives off tourism. So many businesses have gone bankrupt, and many others have had to close down. But in general, everyone has had to adapt socially and change their habits. Yeah, and both individuals and businesses have had to look for other alternatives, but nothing very different from what we were used to. But instead of going to a pub or to our bar, we gather in closed sites or in houses. And yeah, it is true that there is kind of an atmosphere of negativism or pessimism because of the summer or because of the economy. Yeah, but we are doing in some way the same.
Have the number of cases already started decreasing in Spain?
Not really. They are increasing because actually we are not aware. We are not aware of what is surrounding us, and we are doing all the same what we were used to. So right now, at the moment, in my hometown, cases are increasing because of that, because we are gathering and we are meeting like nothing has changed. Yeah, that's so sad.
Wow, now that businesses are reopening in the US, that's what a lot of people are afraid that our cases are just going to skyrocket. They're just going to go right back up.
Yeah, it is happening, yeah.
Are you sick of wearing a mask yet?
Yeah. Totally.
I can go next. I could talk about the US for a minute. Initially, there still seems like a big divide amongst the population about people respecting guidelines to keep distant, to wear masks, etc. And those that think that there's just some people not taking it seriously, which is too bad for anyone who is at risk themselves or for someone with a family member that's at risk. We had a lot of businesses shut down. Places like grocery stores remained open. What were considered essential businesses remained open. We never had any type of mandatory lockdown, but but with everything closed and recommendations to stay at home, people were at home most of the day. I think a lot of people seemed like they just were sick of being at home, and now places are reopening. And we just had a club down the street from our university, Southern Connecticut State University, here in New Haven. We just had a club that got shut down by the city because 1,000 people showed up just a couple days ago, right after we reopened, and that was way above the number of, we still have guidelines for how many people are supposed to be in a space at one time. So places are reopening here, but there's still recommendations on number of people, the amount of distance between people. So at restaurants, you're supposed to be staying distant. Tables have been moved apart. Seating has been moved outside. So yeah, interesting to see how some people just are disregarding the recommendations as if we are back to normal, similar to what you said, which is kind of confusing. I think there's been a lot of confusion and lack of unity among the actions around the country because it was sort of left up to the states individually to deal with what was going on, whether it was testing or guidelines, as opposed to a national uniform effort with consistent recommendations or guidelines. But culture-wise, I live in a neighborhood where, a lot of my neighbors were out walking, and I thought it was nice to be going around my block, and I would see sidewalk art in chalk. Every couple of houses, people were drawing on the sidewalk outside during this period of isolation. It was really refreshing. Yeah, definitely difficult to adapt to these online meetings for work. They're driving me crazy. I don't want to be on my laptop anymore. This doesn't count though. You guys all don't make me crazy, don't worry. But yeah, work was definitely confusing. The university had to shift to all online classes. That was really frustrating. I think a lot of people weren't prepared for this format, this lifestyle of working from home, whether it was mentally or technically. People didn't have, students, employees didn't have the means to video chat. They didn't have the means to do this. And fortunately, I did, but yeah, it's still a pain in the ass. Angie, do you want to continue my New Haven chat?
I agree a lot with what Derek has said. Angie, I'm also a student from Southern Connecticut State University, and in terms of country and state community, I agree that there are a lot of people that are divided about this. I've been hearing a lot of increasing amount of people thinking that and talking about that COVID is a hoax or it's not as serious as it is, because in our state specifically, we have the lowest numbers in the nation. But I feel like personally, I view that as we have had pretty good measures to prevent it, and that is why our numbers are low. I have also experienced a lot of people going out in my neighborhood with the chalk art and everything, so that's funny that both our neighborhoods were doing that. And I have been home most of the time, so in terms of change, I could really speak of my own personal classroom culture. I'm also a teacher. I teach preschool, and our business shut down for a little while. We got a small business loan to stay open, and it has been interesting navigating as teachers and for our families how to proceed. with so much uncertainty with everything that's going on right now. But with all of that uncertainty, I think that overall it has actually strengthened our bond as teachers and with our parents and family members in our community, because we're all sharing information constantly through Zoom and apps like Remind. So we're still staying in constant contact, but we're asking each other more questions and sharing more personal experiences that we might not have shared before to try and understand and connect while all this is happening and we're stuck at home. And I do feel hopeful that this has brought some awareness to some issues, like you touched on, going online and people that might not have laptops or adequate workspaces or even Wi-Fi. So I think that will bring some awareness to some of those issues, which I think will be a positive thing, especially in terms of access. If this type of learning environment has to continue, what could be done for students to ensure that everyone has that base level of access at least. And I feel hopeful that in terms of policy and local business, I hope that instead of going back to normal, we have a new enhanced normal where instead of going to Walmart or Stop and Shop every time you need groceries, you try to go to the farmer's market or contact City Seed or go to a local business instead of going to one of those corporations, because these are the people in your community and these are the people we should be supporting. So I feel hopeful that there are more people that are becoming or even more aware of how important it is to support local. So I hope that continues on. Let's see who else is in this chat. Is
well, does anyone have questions?
Sherry?
Does anyone have questions about New Haven though?
Oh, hi everyone. My name is Sherry. I'm from China, Shanghai. So it's already night in Shanghai. And as you guys may notice that actually in China right now, it's almost back to normal. People can hang out with masks, of course. And yeah, it's get better. And when the epidemic struck our country, it was Spring Festival in China. And as you guys may know, Spring Festival is the biggest festival for Chinese. And you know, we have lots of family, lots of family members. So we would like have a dinner together and visit relatives all the time. But since the pandemic struck our country, so it's not gonna happen. But at first, actually, people are divided into two groups. As you guys have mentioned before, like our generation, we are against having dinner with relatives in this pandemic time. But our parents, they just don't give a shit, or they are not taking it seriously, because at that time our media didn't report that serious situation to us. So our parents, they don't know about it, and they are not taking it seriously, and they hang out without masks, and they are just don't give a shit. And after that, when we notice the seriousness of this situation, people are just not get out at all. That's why I think that's why our country, the pandemic can be under control in such a short time. I noticed that maybe you guys cannot understand that why Chinese people are so obedient, or that is actually because we are a country of collectivism. So I think people are really I think we value stability over freedom or something. We value safety, something like that. That's why people wear put on their masks all the time, and they are always people there to put your mask on if you are eating something in the railway station or something like that. And also at that time, I found a phenomenon is very interesting in our country, because our life is almost back to normal, and the businesses, they are actually reviving at that time. So I've noticed that online shopping, or I can say live streaming, they are actually booming in China right now, and lots of business like local restaurants or something like that, they go live streaming and they make a big money or something. I think that is actually a trend happening in China. And in the end, I would like to say from this pandemic time, I think most people, they found themselves, they can actually find lots of ways to entertain themselves at home, because it is actually unimaginable for Chinese, because we like to eat hot pot or go outside and meet our relatives or something like that. But from this pandemic, I think we find lots of way at home to entertain or something like that. Yeah, that's almost all. So is there anyone have any question?
Wait, Sherry,
Uh-huh.
did you get any arguments with your parents about differing views, them wanting to, not, you mentioned the older generation still wanting to dine together. Did you ever get into an argument with them?
Actually, I heard about some parents of my classmates. They had argument with their parents, but my parents, they are just in the same line with me, because
Okay.
we think safety is the most important thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I thought it was interesting what you were saying about your country valuing stability. I feel like in the US, most people are the opposite, where we're seeing people value their own individual freedom over considering the good or the freedoms of or stability of the whole community. And I've actually been trying to use examples of some of my friends from China or Malaysia as examples of places that when they get some sort of suggestion or direction, are able to decipher, hey, even though this is an inconvenience to me, this will help everyone out. So of course, why wouldn't I do it? So I think that it's nice that your community has that type of mindset.
Yes, I think that is actually many foreigners, they have a bias towards Chinese people or China. I think the bias is between the collectivism and individualism. I struggled a lot actually, because I was deeply influenced by foreign culture a lot. I think I'm not a typical Chinese child, but I try to figure out, because my major is news and communication, and I had internship as journalist. So I would like to I actually investigate a lot about this culture thing, because I can't make sense sometimes, when you listen to media locally and listen to from BBC and VOA, you will struggle a lot. So I just trying to make sense of it. Yeah. Okay, so Alexandra, can you thank you.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Alex. I'm from Connecticut. I study at the University of Connecticut. So actually, I kind of wanted to go off what Angela said about people preserving their own individual liberties rather than doing what's best for the whole community. I actually work in a restaurant. I work at a restaurant called Max Fish in Glastonbury, Connecticut. I would say, culturally speaking, our ability to socialize as a community has been, deeply affected. And I see both sides of, people who come in and they absolutely refuse to wear a mask. And it's really hard to impose, that we're not going to serve them if they don't wear a mask, if it's not, if it's, based on state laws and not federal laws. We have limited seating in our party sizes. They're a lot smaller than they used to be. But we're not doing that bad, thank God. It is a struggle. People choose not to adapt. We actually had to refuse service to a woman yesterday who refused to wear a mask, just to simply walk to the table, not even wearing it at the table. You don't have to wear a mask at the table in Connecticut here. But as a whole, I'm pretty proud of what we were, able to do as a state, specifically Connecticut, because our cases are the lowest in the country, or at least one of the lowest, and they keep going down, which is a really good sign. We still have a ways to go, but I'm pretty confident that, we're able to pull together and get more of these places opened up and make safer environments for people who are immunocompromised and want to go out and have these experiences. COVID affected everybody, so we're all on the same boat here. That's pretty much it. Any questions or anything?
Alexandra, were you nervous about going back to work and working in the public like that?
Yes. So when I work and I wait tables, it's mainly outside. We do have our inside section open. I have to wear a long, heavy uniform, heavy apron, long sleeves, long pants. Usually 2 pairs of gloves because my hands sweat so much that I can't just put 1 pair on because my hands would be too sticky. It has to be over another pair. And I wear a mask and sunglasses on top of that. So it's really hard to wait tables in that type of environment. But I've had people who are super courteous and say, would you like me to keep the mask on while you take my order? And I'm, you know what, it's up to you. I can't make the call on whether they wear the mask or not because I'm not, in charge of the restaurant. But I have some people who don't care and they treat it like it's, the restaurant's back to normal, and they'll walk around without masks and we'll say, oh, excuse me, sir, ma'am, could you please put back on your mask? Usually people are compliant and we don't really have an issue, but every now and again we will get somebody who definitely throw a fit, and it's embarrassing when everybody else can, follow the rules of social distancing and adapt to it, and this one person just really cannot, and they have to go against the grain. So that was my only fear of getting back into the workforce for those types of people.
Has your job come up with some sort of guideline or almost script for you guys kind of to follow so you know how to react in the situation of someone refusing to follow your guidelines at your own restaurant?
So I wish we had that. That's actually a really good idea. We were kind of thrown into this blindly. We've never really dealt with anything like this. I've been in the restaurant industry since I was 17. I'm 23 now, so pretty much my whole life. But we just, it's really hard to know what to do in these situations. We don't really know how far we can enforce the laws. We do have signs up posted everywhere and orders from the governor, but people are just going to do what they want to do at the end of the day. So I wish we had a protocol, but we don't, in short.
Might be
anybody else
bringing up next time at your next staff meeting or something.
Right. All right. Well, I will pass it over to Max.
Okay. Hi guys, I'm Max. I'm from Germany, from Bavaria, in the south of Germany, and the south of Germany was basically the hotspot of the coronavirus here. So we had the most cases, and that's why our government, had a complete lockdown basically for let's see, for like 2 months. So we weren't allowed to go outside. School classes, high school classes weren't at all, and the college classes were online. And my parents even needed a letter from their work that they were allowed to go outside and to, well, go to work. But during these 2 months, the numbers decreased all the time. So we're at 8,000 people still infected here in Germany right now. And we started at like 150,000 active cases. So, well, 8,000 cases and 80 million people living in Germany, I guess. You could say that, well, we're in Germany, we're having the pandemic in control right now. And yeah, we still need to wear face masks all the time. Being in a public space, inside of a public space, if you're out on the street, you don't need to wear masks. And well, everyone is wearing masks because the fine is pretty high here. So you have to pay like $500 if a police officer catches you without one. And well, you wouldn't get served in a restaurant if you're not wearing one. They probably would call the police and, well, not let you in. So the Germans are pretty hard about that. And yeah, so during the time of the complete lockdown, like every one of you knows the Oktoberfest, right? Like people running around in lederhosen and stuff. Like there are more Oktoberfests in every smaller city. There is one, and most of them are in the spring because, well, the weather is nice and it gets warmer. And yeah, of course they got cancelled. Every one of them got cancelled, and like the max capacity of well, events is 100 people, and everything above this will get cancelled, or sports events are without any visitors, so just players basically. But except for that, well, life's pretty normal here in Germany. So does anyone have some questions or anything?
It's interesting. We never, in the U.S., not at least that I'm aware of, we never had any threat, like a fine or anything, to keep people following guidelines. And I mean, I'm sure that may have helped because, like we mentioned, yeah, there's some people that just, you know, like Angie said, think that the virus is a hoax, and they are not wearing masks anywhere. They are not following guidelines. But I wonder if having a fine like that would have helped.
Yeah, probably. I mean, like, we're Germans, like the German stereotype of not laughing and being very serious about everything, that may be true in some cases. And that's why we have a lot of restrictions like that here in Germany. And well, that's basically cultural here. So like no one really minded well, having a fine if you would do something, well, illegal. So yeah, I guess that fine really helped stop the pandemic here. Okay, so I'm gonna pass it over to Patricio.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi everyone, my name is Patricio. I'm a student of the Universidad de Santiago de Chile. Well, we in Chile are going through a very hard situation. All the coronavirus thing is completely out of control. the cases keep going up and going up and going up. We are now one of the, I think maybe we are the 8th or 7th most affected country in the world. The authorities here took a very late, excuse me, we had a very late response to the pandemic. We began the lockdown like 2 months after the first case, and nowadays the people don't respect the quarantine. The authorities said all the non-vital jobs must be cancelled until something change, but the people also don't respect that. I don't know. This whole thing has been very difficult. I personally have staying in my home since March, February, since I lost my job. I used to work in a ice cream shop, and due to this pandemic, I lost my job, and I'm just focusing on my studies. But I don't know, it's all complicated because, like as I said, the cases just keep going up. The people is going out. The government tried to blame the people for making parties, for keep meeting familiars, friends, but they didn't assume their responsibility, because it doesn't matter if you keep people in home and not having parties or something like that. If they also have to leave their homes every day to go to job in the public transport that is also full. I don't know. And the scenario here is very complicated. I don't have very good expectations from the next weeks. Also, we are just beginning the winter, so in a normal year, the public health system used to collapse. Now with all the coronavirus thing, all things will be worse. We change the previous, the health ministry quit his job, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks ago, and just now we are discovering that he hit like 3,000 dead people. So all seems pretty bad here. All the restaurants are closed. Every day, more and more business are getting closed. So I don't know. I just try to be positive. All we are trying to be positive, because it's the only thing we can do now, besides waiting for something to get better. I don't know what else to say. Everyone has any question?
What are you doing to keep busy while you're at home?
I recently finished 2 online courses. I took an online course in Harvard, and another online course in the city of. So I'm trying to take advantage of this and trying to learn things for get prepared to when these all things get better. I also play guitar, play a lot of games. I'm also trying to learn a new language. Everyone else?
Do you have the same issue we had talked about with people ignoring guidelines? Do you have some people that are being almost selfish, essentially, or is everyone afraid and staying home?
Completely. There's a lot of people that keep meeting his friends, keep making parties. We have to ask for permissions of the of the police to get off our homes, and a lot of people get out without having permissions or ask for false permissions. So yeah, it's a very hard situation. It seems they just don't want to accept that we are going through a pandemic. A lot of people think this is all just a conspiracy to control the world and things like that, and they just don't understand. Okay, Aoife, would you like to continue?
Hello. Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Emma. I'm from Malaysia, and when it comes to my country specifically, we are a majority of Muslims, so the culture is very dominated by Muslims. And just so you know, the lockdown happened when it was Ramadan, and it was heading to our celebration, which was Idul Fitri, which was after Ramadan. And most of the time, the people are quite compliant, including now, so there's really no problem. And just like Max said about German, we also have law enforcement here, and we also reinforce some laws, and they put fines on people as well who do not comply to the lockdown. But it was especially hard during Ramadan and Idul Fitri because everyone wanted to go see their families back in their hometown and back at home, but they just couldn't do so. And anyone who did traveling in the country, they put fine on them. So it was kind of difficult at that time, but right now it's quite okay. And speaking of culture, because we are dominated by Muslims, one of the very obvious culture was our Friday prayers. It's when all the Muslim men, they go to the mosque every Friday to pray, and that changed drastically because we couldn't be in one confined space. A lot of people couldn't be in one confined space, so the Friday prayers had to be cancelled, and a lot of I would say the Muslim extremists, if that's what we call them, they were really angry at that fact, and they were like saying that it was a hoax and it was like a conspiracy against Muslims or whatever. But thank God that's just a minority of people. And during Ramadan, we always have this kind of food festival every night where people go to that really crowded area to buy food for breaking their fast. But we didn't have that this year because of the pandemic, and it was kind of sad, and the feeling of Ramadan wasn't really there, so we only had to celebrate at home. Yeah, that's pretty much the change of culture when it comes to going out to buy groceries or going out to eat. I don't know if you guys have this, but every time we go into a shop, we will write our names and our numbers just so they could track us, just in case we get infected. And they would check our temperatures every time we go to a shop. So I think that's really effective. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the culture in my country. But speaking of my experience personally, if you guys know about Malaysia and have been to Malaysia, you would know that we consist of 2 different islands. The main island is where our capital city is, Kuala Lumpur, which has the Twin Towers. But I live in the other island, which is Borneo. That's my hometown, but I study in the other island. So when the lockdown happened, I was in my university, which was in Kuala Lumpur, and I had to rush back to get a flight back to Borneo. So that was kind of a hassle for me because the lockdown happened really suddenly, and to get flights is not really cheap and it's not easy. So that was my experience during the lockdown. And I think it was Derek who said about the online learning. It's very, very difficult as well. And for Malaysia, we have this like very huge differences between people who live in the city and between people who live in the rural areas. So in the rural areas, it's very hard to get internet connection and reception. Lately, there's this news about this one student who had to have her college interview. She had to climb up a tree just to get internet connection. So that was kind of sad. So when it comes to internet connection and accessibility, that's one of our problems because there's a huge difference between people who live in the city and between people who live in the rural areas. So yeah, do you guys have any questions?
I have also heard a lot from my friends from Malaysia how impacted they were having lockdown happen at Ramadan, and how it was really hard for them not being able to have all of their family members around at that time. I know one of my friends, her fiance was on the other side of the country and she couldn't see him, and I know that was really hard for her. I'm not a religious person, so I don't have a big holiday like that, but I can't even imagine what it would be like in the US if this happened like around like Christmas or Thanksgiving, a time when all of us culturally would be getting together. So that sounds like that was really hard.
Yeah, I think that's why a lot of people had a really hard time being compliant to the lockdown, because they really wanted to see their families and their spouses and their parents. But I think that's the sacrifice that we had to make in order to, as Sherry has said, in order to, have that collectivity and for the future purposes, because we don't want this to last any longer,
Well, thank you all. It's been amazing to hear about the responses in your own countries. I do have a couple of questions. Hearing you guys speak, I'm so interested in hearing more about your families and how you have been able to interact with both your immediate family, who you may live with, and your extended family, like maybe grandparents or other relatives that maybe you'd normally be in contact with, but now you've had to limit that. How are you able to connect with them? And how are they doing? Are they okay during this pandemic as well?
I personally I am the oldest of 6, and I'm very, very close to my siblings. And me and my sisters have a group chat that we always talk in every single day. but since the pandemic, we've also been like FaceTiming and sending each other like silly videos every single day, and we're taking advantage of like the game apps on our phones. So we'll play video games together through our phones to stay connected when we can't physically be near each other. So that's what we've been doing.
I personally just live with my mom, my dad, and my grandfather and my grandmother lives in another region of the country. I don't have much connection with with the rest of my family, but my granddads, they get used very quickly to all the technology, and we sometimes do video calls, and they are going very well through this. They are just stay in their home and watch a lot of movies, and that they are fine, thanks to God.
Well, I live with my parents right now, and I find it super difficult to get along with our parents for such a long time and win out. It's really hard, so damn hard. So we actually had some argument, and my mom is looking at me. Oh my gosh! Thank God she doesn't know English, so yeah, I can speak freely. And my parents, we have lots of arguments among like dinner or something like that. You know, sometimes you feel like because I live in dormitory in my university, I'm having my sophomore year. I just finished my sophomore year, and I lived in my dormitory. I just came home at weekends or something, you know, so you can keep the relationship from distance, and you won't have that much argument with your parents. But since the pandemic, you like my parents, they always thought I'm not hardworking at home, always playing with my moms, or not having something keep me busy. So yeah, it's really hard. And speaking of my extended family, mostly we don't do video chat. We make phone calls or something like that. Yeah. So I think the problem is how to deal with issues between you and your parents, and staying at home for such a long time without hanging out to get a coffee or hanging out with friends. Oh, that's suffocating. Yeah. So do you guys have any suggestions about how to get along with parents for such a long time? Yeah.
I think that it's really important to have boundaries, especially during this time. Me and some of my coworkers have been talking about the difficulty of not being able to go to school or work and then coming back and seeing your family, especially for those of them that have children. And people, since you're home, people expect you to be available 24/7, and having to create a boundary of time that you're available for yourself and keeping busy, and then having that time for your family. But I think it's interesting that you mentioned that you kind of are able to use your language as a boundary. So you're saying your parents don't understand much English. And so I find that very interesting, as someone who only speaks one language, that you're able to use that as a boundary for having kind of some of your own thoughts and alone time to speak in English and having them not know what you're saying.
Yeah, I agree with it. And I feel like, you know, I have been exchange students to Germany or to Kenya, other countries. So I found foreign family is completely different from Chinese family. And I know sometimes many people, they have bias about Chinese family and, you know, our lots of things. And sometimes I feel it's so difficult to explain it because it is just different. So if you guys have any, like, you are curious about anything, you can just ask me or go straight to me. Sure, anything you would like to know. Yeah. Okay, so is there anyone want to talk about something?
Hi.
I'll go. Oh,
Oh, okay.
sorry, Effa.
Oh,
Go ahead,
thank
Effa.
you.
First.
Sorry, I mean, is it me now or is it somebody else?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So for my older relatives, Facebook, I'm sure everyone can relate. Older relatives, if you want to connect with them, they tend to use Facebook and they comment, oh, nice seeing you, sweetie, or miss you. So it's been a lot of that for my family. For my cousins and I, there's 4 girls and we're all born within a year of each other. So we've been using, FaceTime, group chats. We get together and we try to do scheduled calls. Also, when I was out of work, keeping in touch with my coworkers was definitely something that kept me sane. My coworkers and I don't know if anyone's ever worked in a restaurant, but they really do become like your second family when you work there. So, having group chats with them and little FaceTime opportunities was something that, we were able to do to stay in touch. Everybody is good on my end, and I'm so thankful for that. Thankful for our health and that we're safe. But that's pretty much it. Social media has been a really big aspect of keeping in touch. And I feel like if we didn't have social media, at this time, we would be in a lot, worse spot than we are in reality. Somebody want to?
I definitely agree with that. It makes me wonder if going forward, kind of globally, that like in terms of policy, that they'll start changing policy and that having access to Wi-Fi will kind of shift into being more of a basic human right with how important technology is in staying connected and access to everything.
It definitely is super important. I don't know if anybody else had anything like this in their community, but I believe our schools were trying to get people who didn't have Wi-Fi, so kids could, use their laptops or computers or phones and try to get online and do the social distancing learning. I don't know if anybody else had anything like that was similar.
When it comes to family, I live with my parents too, but I think I'm really grateful that my parents are very understanding people when it comes to having my own time, and all I have to do is just communicate with them and tell them that I need time to do this or that, and they would understand, because I guess it's because I'm a student and I'm almost finishing my semester, and so I'm grateful that they are quite understanding. As for my grandparents, grandparents are really old. They're 90 years old. So it's really risky to go and visit them. But we do visit them like once a month or twice a month. But we don't do handshakes or hugs or anything like that, because it's really risky to their health. I'm also, because I also don't know if I'm infected or anything like that. So it's really risky. But so yeah, I don't really see my grandparents that often. And I think it's really difficult for me to start studying at home because I've never done that before. I'm used to having classes and having to study and go to school at the other side of my country and not at home. So that's one of the things that is really difficult for me to also like Angie mentioned, to divide the time between spending time with your family and having your own time, and also having time to do your work and study. But I'm really grateful that my family members are quite understanding, and I have a lot of time for myself here back at home. So I guess, yeah, that's it, I guess.
It certainly helps when you have people who value having that alone time as you do during lockdown.
Yeah, definitely. And when you mentioned about a lot of people assuming that we have a lot of free time because we're always at home, I think I'm quite lucky and quite fortunate that my university also has, like, my lecturers are really understanding people, and they are always asking about our health and ask us to take care of ourselves. And even when we have like a shitload of things to do, they are always understanding and are always caring enough to take care of us and guide us through the work. So I think when it comes to my situation and my family members here and having to learn at home, I'm quite fortunate to be surrounded by my family members who are understanding, and also my lecturers who are caring enough to care about our well-being.
Well, thank you all for sharing. I don't know if anybody else wants to share another thing before we go. I'll give you an opportunity if you guys want to jump in. I know there are a couple of people who didn't share about their families, but that's okay. You don't have to.
I'll mention. So I had been avoiding my family actually. Part of my family is in. I see you laughing at me. Part of my family is in Kentucky, but my father's side of the family is here, 2 towns over from me. I live in an apartment with roommates, and for fear of getting my grandmother sick or my nephew, they actually live next door to each other. So, I have a young family member and an old family member, both living in close proximity. So I did not visit my family. And since with my grandma's age, she definitely does not use Facebook. I would call her on the phone to speak over the phone with her, but it's not really the same. She still wants to see me, so it's hard to tell her that, I'm not coming over there to see you in person. But yeah, so it's hard. I haven't really seen my parents recently, or my grandparents. Anyone else avoiding their family?
I'm not avoiding my family, but I am immune compromised. So in that sense, I have to kind of not go to as many family gatherings. So for example, it was my sister's birthday in April, and it was really hard for me to have to stay home when all of my sisters were social distancing, but we're able to do that together, and then I couldn't be a part of that. And we're very close, so it was really hard for me to stay home and not get to celebrate with them.
In my normal life, I used to avoid my family. So this whole thing have been a new experience to me, to be with them the whole time. But I think we are getting well.
Well, it's wonderful to hear that, for the most part, we're able to kind of hold our families close. We have to be a little distant in some respects, but we aren't losing that contact with them. And I'm glad to hear that everybody in your families are okay and they've made it through this fine. Thank you all for sharing with us today. We are so incredibly diverse, but our responses to this have been remarkably similar in many ways. We have all been scarred in some way by the pandemic, and we're at different stages. Some of our countries are kind of still starting to decline with our numbers. The numbers are really starting to ramp up a little bit. So we're all swirling around and dealing with this in the same sort of ways. And I think it's just fascinating to hear how we've all adapted to the virus similarly. But it's not just the virus that we struggle with, really. It's also we have to reconcile the different ideas on how to combat the virus within our own society. And, I've heard a lot today about the importance of everybody kind of working together and getting through this. We've also heard on the other side of the importance of freedom, but with freedom also comes responsibility. So I think that's something that's really important to take away from this as well. So thank you guys so much for joining us. I hope you have a great week, and we will see you again in the future. And so we'll say goodbye for now.
Goodbye, everyone.
Hi, everybody.
Bye-bye.